I found myself back in Krakow for work again, having visited twice this year now. Actually, there wasn't much to add from my last video, but then, on a Friday night, by chance, I went to a K-pop party in the city center. It's actually once a week or fortnight, and you have to pay to get in. There are some Asians living in Krakow and Warsaw, and I became friendly with some of them. The ratio of men to women at that club was very low. I don't recall seeing any Polish men either. Some Chinese and Koreans, even Vietnamese, who are usually working in the Asian restaurants there. My friend told me that the Vietnamese often pretend to be Koreans to impress the girls. The place was full of Polish girls dancing all night as usual, while many shy Asian boys were sitting down, barely showing any rhythm, some even glum looking, just sitting there like lifeless statues, typical shy Asians. I myself sat back calmly, and just tried to enjoy myself by talking to my friend, and the group that he was acquainted with. There were girls looking at me, but to be frank, I've never practiced this type of game, and just stayed with my friends with my drink in hand. Still, there were some Asians that weren't shy and they were successful. I saw one even flirting with a girl, talking and dancing. Perhaps not very well, but I can still imagine an Asian with some game enjoying himself in this environment. He was dressed up in K-pop fashion, but I overheard him telling a girl he was Chinese. It didn't bother her anyway. As the club was closing, queues soon formed outside the cloakroom, and I spoke to some girls next to me. I was a little surprised that one was only 14. A friend had said hello to a girl that passed by as well, and when I asked, he just told me that she works in a coffee shop. Perhaps it's generational, but I personally have no interest in K-pop, yet these young girls did. They were mostly teenagers and students. I began to realize something on top of my earlier experiences. Poland's economy isn't actually so great as I thought. It's not just the wages are far lower than Western Europe. The minimum wage is about half of the UK's, and what's considered a good job over there wouldn't be so in the West, while the cost of living is approaching the West standards, especially in the big cities. I recently found out that a girl, who had flirted with me on an earlier visit, was lying all along. She told me she was in IT, but when I spoke to someone that knew her, he said she actually works as a receptionist. She was obviously trying to impress me. Even a girl that went to a top university in Poland can still end up working a job that would be far below what one can expect in the West. These young women were so naive. They hadn't really entered the workforce in Poland yet, and had no idea of what to really expect. One of us in the group was actually married to a Polish girl for a few years. He was quite jaded. She was constantly whining, loved to argue and complain, a typical Polish trait. It even got up to the point where he didn't want to go home after work at times. I noticed a sweet but naive side to some of these young girls. They hadn't yet been forced to work for a living in this country yet, and the careers and dreams they have must feel like a punch to the stomach to them when that reality finally sets in. The men coming here to take advantage of them wouldn't have helped either. Perhaps this is what would make some of them bitter and spiteful over the years. Nevertheless, they soon realized that a man with some success in life is quite a good catch really. I was often warned about the racism in Poland. My friend is Korean and he told me people in the streets were deliberately avoiding him during the COVID crisis. They had even called him monkey at times. It just amazed me because South Korean is so far more technologically advanced than Poland, and yet the locals still called him that. My worst experience was a girl walking past me with her friends, mimicking Mandarin in a funny way. I just felt it was silly. The majority simply don't have a clue about Asians, the different cultures and languages. We literally all look and talk the same to most of them, fortunately, and I suspect it's because the culture is quite bland. The women are interested in foreigners. One person I met told me the men hate us for it as well, but I have still yet to come across a story involving any violence towards foreigners. The Polish girl that took an interest in me at work was happy to see me again. I noticed she was wearing more makeup, the usual on my first day back as well, and she was excited when I gave her some almond biscuits from London's Chinatown. I'm not really attracted to her, but we're on friendly terms. I do feel they can discriminate certain peoples over others now. I befriended a man from Saudi Arabia and went to lunch with him once. The girl serving us was smiling and warm to me. He was behind me in the queue, and then her face turned stone cold when it came to his turn. Like Asians, they seem to have a stereotype about Middle Eastern men as well. It's like they think they're all seen as Muslim and potential terrorists. It can be silly, but there is a nasty side to it as well. My last note is also on fashion and dress sense. I feel they seem to like smartly dressed men more than anything. Perhaps it gives the impression of someone with wealth and status, like a businessman or someone influential. A casual, smartly dressed sense, clean cut and shaven, can really work well. looking like a professional. Never too flashy, but dressing like an average working-class man is not advised. Aside from that, I've actually grown tired of the Ukrainian women I've met there. As discussed in my video on them, I've just found them quite dull and shallow. The polished girl, for all her faults, at least has more character, personality, while I'm just feeling nothing but apathy back at the Ukrainian women I've spent time around.